be careful what you ask God for, because He might answer. He might give that to you, and it might just blow your mind, and not always in a good way. I watched a documentary about a brand, something that I really like, something that's a big part of my life, something I obsess about, if I can put it that way. And I watched a documentary on the making of that product. And I remember after watching that documentary, I sat there and I said, wow, this could have not happened if this guy didn't insist on certain things that were going on. I would live in a world that didn't have that product. Like it would not have existed. And I remember just sitting there thinking, that's huge. That's big. And obviously I started to ask myself that what is at stake then, as far as I'm concerned, if I just coast through life, just going with the flow, basically. If I don't strive to reach my potential, what is actually at stake? Is it something that big? Like what would have happened had that guy not insisted on a couple of things, like leveled up and gone through what he went through to make sure that that thing happened. And I pondered that question for many years. And I prayed, and I asked God, Guti, tell me what's at stake. I was not ready for what happened. When he answered and he showed me the vision, picture of what was at stake if I just continued the way that I was going. Man, that I saw, that was the most frightening thing I have ever seen. The most frightening thing I had ever seen in my entire life. And I remember when that thing came, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly where I was. I can see everything that was happening around me when it dropped in my spirit and I saw it. And it felt like I ran out of air. Like I just, for some seconds, and I was just, that's how frightening that thing was that I saw. And I think one of the things that made it even more frightening, or as frightening as it was how accurately me that thing was. It was so me. It was the most me thing I had ever seen. And how those two things were in that one thing, I have no idea. How can something so scary, so frightening, be so me? And that obviously sent me into like okay, God, what was that? And I wish I never asked. I wish I never asked, because that which I saw, I think it made me think that even if I die, that's okay. Even if I die and I don't get to do that, that's fine. it's okay. And yet there was a part of me that was saying, but you gotta do that. And that for me was what made me realize what a human being actually is, because that was me. It showed me that if we were to be told or shown what we truly are, I think most of us, I think most people would run or just, it's too much. I think what a human being really is in our entirety, the fullness of us, I think that's the thing that scares us the most in the world. I think our fear comes out of that the truth of who we are. I don't think, yeah, we can be scared of people or scared to do certain things. But I think the biggest fear that lives in us is us. Is us. Because what I saw shook me. It really shook me, and it made me understand why a lot of people will not reach that. And not because they can't, but because they wouldn't want to. They wouldn't want to. That is I don't want. I would fully understand if people saw that and said, I don't want to do that. Because that's exactly what I said. But it kept nagging at me. And me being me, I was like, at least I can do is attempt, to do this thing. But I think the point I'm trying to put across here is that there is something about all of us that is so big and so out of this world and so scary. And that thing is fully us. Fully us. So I think when we experience fear, it's not always a foreign something that's invading. Sometimes the fear that you're feeling is exactly you coming out, And yeah, I think it reminds me of an experience I had once. I was at a car dealership, my usual thing that I do every now and then. And I was sitting in this car that I really like, very expensive car, very, that's the car for me that's like, yeah, I've made it. Once I'm in a car like this, I've made it. And I remember I'd sat in that car before, and I would be excited and I would fantasize and dream and all kinds of things. But for some reason, that day, I got this feeling in my stomach of just complete terror, like fear, sitting in that car. And I was like, what was that? What just happened? Like fear came over me, and it was, I think I had all these questions of like, is this ever going to happen? How will I do this though? Like how can I live this out? And I'm like, this has never happened in this car, Usually this is a happy place where I can sit and just dream and fantasize and all that stuff. And I realized during that time what actually was happening, because I went into prayer mode, and I was like, God, what just happened? And I realized that the part of me that can live that life out, that is capable of living that life and buying that car, the part of me that was all of that was the one that was kind of like coming up in me, almost like trying to match the car and whatever it is that I was fantasizing about that day, that it was coming to say yes. And the feeling that it produced in me, which I called fear, was actually like that part of me coming up, because it's not a part of me that I live in every day, you know. So I think that the shock of me being la 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 and that thing, the difference between those two things is what caused that feeling in me. And I was like, oh, so that was a calling, man. That was something in me saying, yes, you can. It was me coming to meet that life, you know. Yeah, I know it sounds woo-woo, but I really believe that the stuff that scares us is not very far from who we are. Eh? That really was a calling. That was me finally saying, yes, I can buy this car, actually. I can buy this car.